So in this video, we're going to take a look at some Java basics. We're going to look at the background of Java, where it came from, commenting in Java, how whitespace works in Java, Java syntax, some basic types of errors in Java, and then we're going to look at the basic outline in Replit and what these programs are going to look like as we program. So first thing we need to know is kind of where Java came from. So Java is one of the newer languages founded in 1991 by James Gosling, who worked at Sun Microsoft Systems. It was originally called Oak Green, and the name was later changed to Java, but it started off as Oak Green. And it first was introduced to the public in 1995. So while that might seem like it was a long time ago, as programming languages go, this one is actually a little bit newer. Now, it was the first programming language that was actually created for the web, which is why it all of a sudden became so useful, because back in the 90s was when the World Wide Web was growing, and this language was designed to work with the web. Another important fact that made Java so powerful, and the reason it became so popular, is because it is an object-oriented programming language. And what this means is that it is focused on and centered around the creation of objects, and we use a lot of classes to do that. So it's a little bit different than maybe some languages you've seen before, but the object-orientedness of it makes it really powerful. So we're going to talk about objects in this course, and most of our programs are going to be based entirely around objects. Finally, Java has a library of extra software that we can use when developing a program to create graphics, communicate over networks, interact with databases, etc., etc. So there's a lot of built-in things from Java that we can pull in to our programs, and then we can use those built-in functions, classes, and have them aid our programs as well. Now, the basic problem-solving process we're going to go through when we program in Java is for every program we write, we're going to start by just understanding the problem. We're going to read through the instructions, and we're going to make sure that we fully understand what the problem is asking us to do. Then, when we program in Java, we typically take that problem and we break it down into manageable pieces. We don't start with the whole problem and try to attack the whole thing all at once. We break it up into little pieces, and then we program little bits at a time. So we're going to break that problem down, and by doing so, we'll be able to design our solution. Now, in the process, we might consider alternative solutions. Maybe, we thought of something at first and we realized that it really wasn't that efficient or that effective. And so we can kind of refine that as we go. We really want to think about how we're going to design a program that's going to solve that problem. We then implement it, and then we test it out, and if we find any bugs, we fix it. We basically repeat this process. So as we're problem solving in Java, it's a continuous process where we might be trying to make a program more efficient in different ways. So just always being open and flexible to the thought that we might be able to make something in Java better. Now, as we program in Java, we're going to use the comments in Java to help us, document our programs. So the first thing you need to know is that in Java, there is a multi-line comment. And so if you type /* and then later have a */, anything that is between those two symbols, so this right here and this right here, is known as a multi-line comment. So anything that we type there is for the person reading our code, and the computer straight up ignores it. Now, the other type of commenting that we can do is a single line comment, and for that we would do a /. So every language has its own commenting procedures, and this is how Java works. So we have /* and then */ to signal the beginning and end of a multi-line comment, and then the // for a single line comment. Now, whitespace in Java is very, very different than whitespace in some other languages, specifically Python. So we've programmed in Python before, and Java uses whitespace very, very specifically as just, space on the page. It kind of just ignores all of the white space, which is very different than Python. In Python, if we pressed enter, it meant something. In Python, if we tabbed, it meant something. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to blow up these different pieces of code that I got out of a textbook. So here we can see, I move these other ones out of the way. This one's pretty nice. You can see that you've got some white space in there. We've got some indents, we've got some enters. Everything's really easy to read. Now, this program right here will run exactly the same. You'll notice that there's very little white space. We kind of smushed everything together. Brackets are very, very close together. So you can see here, we had our brackets spaced out. Here, they're very smushed, but these programs work exactly the same because Java ignores your white space. Now, what's often even more mind-boggling is something like this. So I don't know about you, but this is unbelievably difficult to read. I would much, much, much rather read something that looks like this and says Public Class Lincoln than try to piece that together. You can kind of see how difficult that is to look at. And then we press enter and then we tabbed in. This program right here will run identical to this one. It's just a lot more difficult for a programmer to read the code. So what you have to remember with Java is that Java ignores the white space. It doesn't play a role like it does in languages like Python. And as a result, you have some freedom when it comes to programming, but you just want to make sure that you organize things in a very easy to read fashion. If your code is hard to read, it's difficult to debug and it's difficult to, ask someone for help on it if you get stuck. Now, when I see the word syntax, which is kind of our next word that we're going to take a look at, Java syntax are simply the rules of a language that dictate how the elements of that language can be combined to form different statements or different rules. So basically what happens with syntax is that Java has its own rules, just like Python has its own rules, and C++ has its own rules, and C# has its own rules. And as a result, we need to make sure we follow these rules in order to create our program. So here, some examples of Java syntax include identifiers that can't begin with a number. So that means a variable name cannot begin with a number. So that's one thing about Java syntax that we need to remember. And the fact that braces begin and end classes and methods. Those are two parts of Java, two pieces of its syntax that we need to follow in order to program in Java. So there's a lot of Java syntax rules that we're going to talk about. And remember that the word syntax simply means the rules of the language. So every language has their own rules, and we're going to look specifically at the ones for Java. Now, in Java and in every other type of programming language, there are a couple main types of errors. The first type of error is a compile time error. So that error is identified by the computer, and the computer checks to make sure you are using correct syntax. So a compile time error can occur when we have a syntax error. So you're going to see this pop up like, hey, you forgot your semicolon. Hey, that variable name is invalid. Hey, this statement has no meaning in Java. And you're going to have to make sure you catch those as the computer catches those for you and fix them in order for your program to run. The other thing that you might see are incompatible type errors. So this means that maybe you're trying to perform a math operation like division on a string variable, which contains text. You can't actually do division on text. So incompatible types just means you're doing something with a value that you're not actually able to do. Now, the next type of error that you're going to run into is a runtime error. And these occur during program execution. So you're running your program, it compiled well, it didn't have any of the Java syntax rules, but all of a sudden your program crashes because something happened. Maybe it's with user input or something like that. So the best programs are robust programs, which means you're going to avoid as many runtime errors as possible, and you're going to guard against them. So for example, maybe the user enters in a value and then that value goes into the denominator of a fraction in a later math calculation. Well, that could result in a divide by zero error, which is not going to come up in our compile time or in our syntax errors, but it's going to come up when the user actually enters in a zero to go in the denominator of their fraction. Or maybe they enter in a negative number to go into a square root. So we want to make sure we guard our program against these types of errors so that if the user enters in something bad, we kind of loop them back when we say, hey, that was a bad choice. Can you please try again? The next type of error is a logical error, which means that the program compiles, the program runs, but you're getting the wrong answer. So this typically occurs when you have a math statement that is incorrect, and say you're calculating the area of a circle, but the radius value you're putting in isn't producing the area value that it should be according to the equation. Those are your logical errors. And then finally, the word debugging, while it's not actually a type of error, is what we do. We find and we correct and we fix the defects in our program so that we can fix our program and that we can improve it and make it run and have it be an efficient, well-written, robust program. So what we're going to do now is we're going to write our first Java program. Now, something you have to keep in mind as you watch this video is that we are going to learn how to program in Replit. So you have to note that every single Java editor, whether you use BlueJ, Dr. Java, Eclipse, Replit, etc., whatever you do, they are all structured and they all run Java programs a little bit differently. They're very, very close, but they are not identical in how they run things. So you need to be careful and kind of keep in mind that, yes, we're learning how to do this in Replit, and it will transfer over to these other editors, but you will probably have to do a little bit of research on these other editors to figure out how to, run your actual program and how to compile it and then run it. So just keep that in mind. Things might look a little bit different. So what we're going to do here is we're going to open up Replit. So I'm going to kind of switch here. I'm going to bring my slides over here. We're going to open up Replit and we're going to actually program our first program. So I am going to go into Replit. I'm going to suggest that you create a new folder. You can see I have a Java Unit 1 folder, but what I would do if I were you is create a new folder and call it something with Java and Unit 1. So that way make it stand out amongst your other folders. So from here, I click Java Unit 1. You can see I have a couple of different programs already in here because I've been programming with it. And once you're in that folder, you're going to click Create. Now, previously, when we did our Python files, we were clicking on the Python ones, but now we're going to click on and type in Java. We have a couple of different Java options, but I'm going to click on Java, regular Java. And then I'm going to name this program Java Unit 1 Lesson 1, and I'm going to call it First Program. Now, what I'm creating here is I'm creating a Replit folder. This folder for my program is going to hold all of my Java class files for this particular program. So kind of keep that in mind. We're going to have a couple different files going simultaneously inside of this folder. So I'm going to click Create Replit, and it's going to create this for me. Now, this folder that pops up is the general folder that is going to pop up every time. Now, this first thing that you see here is a class called main. Do not delete this out of your program. In order to run your programs in Replit, you have to have this class. Now, if you use another editor, you will probably not have this class in your folder because you do not need it. However, in Replit, in order to run your programs, you have to have this particular file. Now, what I do want you to do is I want you to delete this print line here on line 3. Just make it blank for right now. That is just a generic hello world print statement. We don't need it, nor do we really want it, because we don't want our program, for this case, to print hello world. So you see here that we have just public class main and then this line of code. Delete that one print statement so that this is all you see, and then leave it be. So what we're going to do next is we're going to actually add in the file that is going to, we're going to actually add in the file that we're going to program in when we program. So if you look up here, we can see files, and you'll see that there's a new file button right here. So you can see if you hover over it, it says new file. That is where we are going to add in a new program. So we're going to add in a new file. We're going to add in a new Java class file. And it's going to give me a space to type in a name. Now, what I name this is very important. It needs to be named as one phrase. So if you have multiple words, you need to use your camel casing. Because it is a Java class, it needs to contain a capital letter. And whatever you name this will actually be programmed in the first line of this Java class file. So here we're going to call this file first program.lowercase java. It will always have to be .lowercase java, and if you press enter, this will pop up, okay? So you have to be very careful. This main file right here is still here. You haven't touched it except for deleting that one print statement. Now we have our first program.java, and this is where we're actually going to code most of our program. Now, I'm going to come back to our notes here. Don't type this in yet, but this is going to be the basic skeleton of code that starts every single Java class file that you have as your main class file in your program. So we're going to type this in, and you'll notice here in the little arrows, it says name of class. Whatever you named your file, so in our case, it's first program, is going to go here exactly. Your Java class file name and the class name that goes right here, they have to match. If they don't match, things will not run properly. So what we're going to do next is we are going to program this into our program. So now we're going to write that into our first program here. So your first line of code is going to say public class first program. Notice first program here matches first program.java here. They have to match. You'll actually notice that public class main matches as well. But here we have public class first program. Now, in Java, we use brackets to begin and end groups of statements. So because this has a class heading, which we can see with the word class, we're going to open it, and then it's going to automatically close our brackets. Now, I don't know about you, but programming that close together is really difficult. So if I press enter here, it's going to open and close the bracket for that class file. So you can see here I have my class heading. I have a bracket to open that class and a bracket to close that class. All of my code is going to go in here. Now, the next line of code, and we'll explain this in a little bit what these words actually mean, but this next line of code is also going to be the same line every time for whatever Java class file is your main file. So here we have public static void main. Needs to go in that exact order. Parentheses, and it'll automatically pop up another set of parentheses. We then have string, two of the square brackets, an open and a closed. You'll find those above the enter sign next to the P. And then after those, you do a space and you do args, the word args. Then we're going to press enter again. We're going to open and close another set of brackets, and we're going to press enter. So this skeleton that you see right here is how you will start every single first Java class program that you program in a project. The only difference is that this word right here will change to match the name of the class over here. So this is kind of just something you're going to have to get used to and memorize. It's how our Java programs start out. Now, this is where Replit differs from other Java programming softwares. In those, you can compile this program and then run it. In order to run a program in Replit, we have to do something a little bit different. In order to run a program in Replit, we have to go into the main function and we have to type a line of code to call our first program Java class to run. Now, I like to add an additional enter sign here so you can see our bracket opens on a weird line. I like to bring it down. And what we're going to do is we're going to add one line of code right here. So what we're going to do inside of here is we're going to add this line of code. You'll notice first program, again, is the name of my Java class. That is the main class that I want to run. We're going to do our class name dot main parentheses args parentheses semicolon. Okay, that's going to actually call our Java class that we wrote in first program to run. Okay, so we're going to go into our program here and we're going to write first program dot main parentheses args colon. Okay, so notice first program is found here, first program is found here, first program is found here. It's all very consistent. So this is the general start to every Java program you're going to write in Replit. You're going to have this line here, line number 4, where we replace the word first program, and that's going to call our main Java class file to run. And then this is our skeleton code that is going to be the same for every class file that we write in Java. That's kind of the main bulk of our code. So here we can see the name of our program there. So all of these words that you see, this public, static, void, main, they all have a meaning and a purpose. The 3 that I really want you to know are right here. So the first thing I want you to know about those words is that the word public is talking about the visibility of that class. It's the scope of the class. So public means it is visible to all other classes in the folder. So we're going to create programs that have a large number of classes in the folder. So you can see here we have 2. And the reason that main and first program can see each other is because of this word public. Because I made first program public, main can see it and call on it. And we're going to have more Java class files that appear as we program a little bit more. But this is just where we've started, okay? So we only have 2 here to start. Then the word static means that this particular class will not create an object. So this word static right here, the reason we need that for our main chunk of code is our main chunk of code cannot create an object. We don't want it to. We want it to run the code, not focus on creating objects. And when we start creating objects, that's going to make a little bit more sense. And then finally, this word main is an executable method, which is where the bulk of our code is going to go. So those are the 3 main words I want you to know right now. We will talk about void later on. That's another big one as well. But for right now, I need you to know that public makes it visible. The static means it will not create an object of itself, of first program's type. And the main is our executable method where the bulk of our program goes. Now, we have a couple more things that we want to talk about concerning Java syntax before we end this video. The first includes those curly brackets. So those curly brackets communicate the beginning and end of different types of groups of code, and Java uses them a lot. So in Python, we use things like enters and tabs to communicate the beginning and end of different chunks of code. And in Java, we use brackets to do the same. So brackets are used to start and end the class, which is what we did here. So you can see here, we started and ended a class using a set of brackets. We started it and we ended it. Then again, we use brackets for the start and end of the main method. So you can see here, started it, ended it, and then our code all goes in there on the inside. We also use them to start and end conditionals, which are our if statements. And then we're also going to use them to start and end loops, for loops, while loops, etc. And then when we get to writing our own methods and our own classes, we're going to use them to start and end methods as well. Now, I always suggest keeping brackets organized with indenting because it makes them so much easier if you do. That way you can match them up, you can see where they end and land, you can see where they start and end. That's what that should be there. If you don't have them organized, this is where many errors occur. So you'll see here I'm very careful because I want to be able to clearly see start and end, and that everything is grouped together accordingly. Now, the last thing that we're going to have that we've only seen on one line of code is that every line of code in Java that is not a heading, a bracket, or the start of a conditional or the start of a loop must end in a semicolon. So basically anything that doesn't attach itself to brackets will have to end in a semicolon, because semicolons are how we signal the end of a line in Java. And it's why the white space isn't important. It's why you can press enter a bunch of times and then it doesn't impact your program. Semicolons signal the end of a line, not an enter statement. So we saw that right here in our main statement. If I can get it to pop back up. Our main statement here, you can see we ended with a semicolon because that doesn't associate with brackets. It's inside of there. It's not a loop. It's not a class heading. It's not the main method. It's not a conditional. It is just a regular line of code. Every single regular line of code will end in a semicolon. So we're going to use these main syntax rules and these basics to now start writing programs that do a little bit more in Java.